Thank you, Ritu ma'am, for sharing and deliberating your thought with us. I now request CA Kishorji Mehta to please acquaint our speaker to members.
Yeah, thank you, Sheetal, for giving me an opportunity to introduce CA Sourabh Jain. CA Sourabh Jain is a qualified chartered accountant and a company secretary as well as a certified internal auditor. He carries a rich experience of more than 8 years in the space of internal audit and risk management. He is currently working as a partner with Fortune KSII Consultant Private Limited, leading the consultancy wing. Prior to this, he was holding a varied position in EY Asian Paints Suzlon in internal audit division. He has carried out internal audit and SOP development of key business processes like production, procurement, inventory management, finance and accounts, direct indirect taxes, capex, receivable management, advertisement, sales promotion, and order to cash, etc. Sourabh has led firms on various internal audit, cost optimization, compliance management, SOP development, IFC development for top companies in sectors like heavy engineering, capital goods, project management, FMCG, chemical, and aviation. He has worked extensively on clients such as Kalpataru Power Transmission, Abbott, Pfizer, Pidilite Industries, Suzlon, Asian Paints, Dyer, Meru Cabs, Reliance Capital, Confluence, Go Air, etc., and many more. Sourabh has also worked across the geographies of some of the global as well as Indian conglomerates. His experience includes geography like US, Australia, and Europe. Sourabh is highly updated with all major IT applications, leading ERPs. He exhibits excellent communications and interpersonal skills. His strength lies in the out-of-the-box thinking and different approach to the risk management. With this, I would like, I'm feeling very happy to welcome my own school friend, CA Sourabh Jain. Sourabh, the dice is yours.
Thanks, Kishore. Thank you, Ritu, and thanks, Sheetal. Thank you, everyone, including Amit, for inviting me and giving me this opportunity. Good evening, members, and good evening to everyone out here. Thanks for joining. This is a happy state to see. Trust me, this is a happy state. Although it's on Zoom, but it's a very happy state that we all are still connected, and members are highly interested in topics like internal audit, and we see a crowd gathered and coming around on this. Not taking too much of time, I would initiate. So today's session is fairly interactive, and I would like to keep it pretty simple and broad to two major topics. I can take a vote which topic would we want to have first. So one is discussion around the evolution of internal audit, what it was to what it is today, and what is expected when as an internal auditor you go to a boardroom of a large organization. What is expected out of you? That's one. Second, how do you perform an internal audit? The basics of it. How do you start? What is it? What you do? So probably, I would request any of the members to put it in the messages. What is the topic that they would want to have it first? Do we want to have evolution first, or do we want to understand how to perform an internal audit in the major framework? I'll wait for a minute for people to type. Ritu, do we have a chat box open?
Yes, we have it.
Yes.
If it is open, then my question is, do we have people, or it's just attended?
No, people is there, but they are giving opportunity the way you want. You can start.
Sure. Okay. So looking at the people around and looking at the crowd, I would want to first take it up on the evolution part of it. Okay, let's see where and what is internal today that is expected out, and how people are now strengthening and working onto it. 1 second, I'll just present my screen. I hope the screen is visible.
Yes, very much.
Okay,
Yes.
perfect. So now, before I start, let me tell everyone what do I think in internal audit is. The word audit probably today doesn't do justice to the entire concept of internal audit. Uh, because I'm sure if I would have been in front of you guys and we would have asked this question, most of you would have said that audit means. Sorry. Yeah. So if we were there in front of each other and I would have asked a question, what is audit? Probably most of us would have answered audit is verification, audit is checking, audit is making sure things are working, and audit is assurance. So audit as such gives it a very, very wrong notion that internal audit means to scrutinize and to only means to scrutinize and check what is happening in the organization and what is going wrong in the organization, and probably report all the wrongdoings that are happening in the organization. My only answer to it is that internal audit today is no more an audit scope. I think everyone knows what's going wrong in their organization. Everyone understands, every CFO, every CEO of the company knows each and every bit of what's going wrong in the organization. Internal audit today is more about consulting. It's more about giving them guidance on the risk that they face. It's mitigating the risk that can happen. When we were talking 2-3 years before, when I used to audit and when we used to put points to our clients saying that okay, we need to have a better IT system, we need to have a more robust data integrity, we need to have a more robust controls on access and who will approve what and DOA. It was not understood. The risk was not understood. But today, when COVID came in, and majority and almost all the organizations have to start working from home, they realize the importance of it. The idea is of internal audit today is just that it's more about preparing organizations for the worst first. That's point one. Second, making the best of processes and systems to run in an organization. Point three, making sure it's cost effective, it's cost efficient, and suggesting them ideas that can save cost. So it has evolved from the time where internal auditor was expected to just see whether this paper is signed or not, this document is attached or not. It has turned more into a consulting zone where people look internal auditors as the guys who can suggest the best way to work and whom they can trust, whom they can follow. I have personally seen in all my experience that a lot of companies change their processes basis suggestions from internal auditors, and that's what they expect out of us, the best process to run. So today, if you have to look at it, traditionally, as I said, it was always a compliance function. It was just said कि हाँ ठीक है यार लिखा हुआ है कहीं तो लॉ में वो सेक्शन दिया हुआ है उस सेक्शन के हिसाब से ऑडिट करवा लो. That was the broad idea. Whenever we used to talk to people about internal audit, they used to compare. I mean, I remember my days when people used to compare auditors on fee value. Okay, वो internal auditor X amount ले रहा है, वो X minus 10% ले रहा है, इससे करा लो. There is absolutely no understanding given on what he is bringing to the table, what not bringing to the table. But that has now changed. Probably I would not say that has changed for a smaller organization up to a 10 to 50 crore, but anyone run by a third generation or above 50 to 100 crore value today does not believe that internal auditor is just a compliance function. There is a huge shift in value creation. I mean, I can tell you with all my experience that people want savings to come from internal audit. People want changes to come from internal audit, and people are not looking at seeing any observations like this was not signed, that was not documented, that paper is not available. It's more of a change that they would want to see. Today, as we all look at it, I'm sure most of you would have also seen, they are seen like business partners. They are seen like someone who can roll the business along and who can take it forward. The scope has widened up. Earlier, it used to just be restricted to finance and accounts, then it moved to critical processes like production, material management, procurement, HR. Today it has increased far more. Today we are reaching to IT audits, we are going to forensics, we are also going into SOP development, ERP implementations. So internal audit as an overall structure has changed. That's the reason why I say calling it an internal audit probably doesn't do justice to the entire work that is being done and entire expectation that is being set from someone who's a core expert in internal audit or risk management. If you look what has changed, why these lessons have come in. I mean, there are multiple cases that we see from CCD's fraud to Satyam's lessons to Wipro's control failure. You talk about Toshiba, you talk about PNB, and then the famous one where Nirav Modi and all that has happened. It's all about not having enough controls. It's all about not having mechanisms to check your controls. And finally, a mechanism to predict that what can go wrong is what an internal audit is all about. It's not about a post facto thing. It's more about organizations of the future that they build. I can very candidly discuss a very good incident that I remembered. Uh, in the past, when someone discussed with me, why are you so interested in being internal auditor and not trying to move to a stat audit or a tax audit or any other ambit? I mean, my answer was just this. If I was a stat auditor, I probably review numbers. I probably and okay, before I answer this, I don't want to offend any stat auditor or tax auditor. Probably I love internal audit so much that I probably can vouch for it anywhere and anytime. But yeah, coming back, so I always told them, stat auditor or a tax auditor probably works out on something that has happened, makes and give assurance to board, to management about the numbers that are present, etc. And then they would prepare whatever is required to be done as per the law. But when it comes to an internal auditor, no law governs me. I mean, I'm free to run in an organization like an owner of an organization today. So when we do an internal audit, I can suggest a process change as if I own that organization, and that gives me that kick. That's the thing that makes me run, because I have that authority to recommend things to people. I have the authority to change things that have been followed, and that is what always makes it interesting, and that has kept it running over past so many decades. And even now, when people's expectations have changed, so if you look at it, I mean, this is probably an idea where you run a company, where you run a management show without even owning it up. So that's broadly what has changed in the past decade. A focus on risk, a focus on control, and a focus on value creation is something that everybody today expects. Even talking about the law, if you talk about the latest Companies Act 2013, it has given so much of empowerment and so much of focus on governance, be it of key managerial persons, be it of audit committee, boards, or even the auditors, the statutory auditors. A lot of them have been made responsible to talk about risks and controls. No one can today run away by saying, I don't know what controls are followed at my organization. I'm sure everyone knows that board of directors are mandated to report whether their controls are working or not, whether there is an operating effectiveness or not. Similarly, auditors are expected to report whether a company has enough controls to mitigate any kind of risk that can come in and that can lead to default. So today the focus has changed both from the mindset and from the law requirement, and that has given a huge boost to the entire system and function of internal audit. Okay. Now what is the difference? What do we call as risk-based internal audit, and what has changed? Okay. So let's talk about it. Traditionally, I can tell you, be it bank audits, be it other traditional internal audits, the focus was on transaction. We will go. I mean, I remember during my articleship initial days, I was asked to go, and then we will go and ask, boss, take 100 vouchers, check these 5 things, and keep putting a tick. If it's a yes, it's a yes. If it's a no, then report it. And that's how it was done. It was all transaction. take 100 vouchers, 200 vouchers of every possible process. Today, it has moved to a control design assessment. Today, probably out of we know, I mean, most of you must be aware, there's a concept called as one sample review or a one sample design test, where you check just one sample. You just see how that one sample has worked, and you just see whether there is a possibility of this process breached anywhere. If that's there, that's your design assessment. So if you have tested the design, if you have tested the control around the entire design, you no need to check 200 vouchers. It will all work the same way. The idea is to make it more process oriented rather than being people driven, or people are just deciding what is to be done. Similarly, it used to be earlier a checklist based approach. Okay, a lot of it was a checklist based approach. Today it is purely an analytical approach. Maybe when we'll go in detail on how to do an internal audit, we will probably review this as well. But it's no more checklist. It's more about where do I have a risk? Where do I see numbers showing me a risk? Where is it that it can go wrong that we review? Third, transactional accuracy, same. We focus was to make sure that every transaction is correct. Today, it's all about making operations efficient, and correction will come automatically. A lot of it, a focus was on documentation and policy compliances. Today, it has all moved to a control efficacy. How smart or how strong your controls are. And rather than being very rigid on our own policy, the focus has moved to best practices. I mean, how does McDonald's work? How does Starbucks work? If someone is into F&B sector, is what they will ask. How would the L&T work if someone is into construction? So the focus is entirely on the best of the sector and to earmark themselves with the best practices. And that's where you are very much okay as a company to change policies and move more to industry best practices. I hope I am making sense and being clear and audible enough. Just a yes from anyone.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Okay. So, yeah, sorry. Moving. Now, the entire evolution, it was internal audit. It became risk-based internal audit, what we just discussed. Today, it is entirely value-added risk-based internal audit. People have realized, यार ये risk तो ठीक है, but मेरा फायदा किधर है? Value add किधर हो रहा है? Risk तो भूकंप आने पे भी है और भूकंप नहीं आने पे भी है. So that does not help me. I can't start building. If earthquake आ गया, सब कुछ तबाह हो जाएगा, तो you should have 4 different sites where your data is stored. Cannot be a basis of my control mitigation. It has to be a value addition. It has to be a review of what can go wrong in what value. How much will be the impact? So entirely from internal audit, for some time it went to a risk-based audit, but today is entirely a value-added risk-based audit, where people would want you to do a correlation between value addition and a risk involved. The focus is to make internal audit function as a self-funding function. Every time, I'm sure those who are very, very well equipped with internal audit reviews and those who are doing it day to day, I mean, the expectation from client is as simple as this: where is my cost saving? They no more they would be interested in changes, but their main focus is a cost saving. So how an internal auditor changes himself, he basically moves from risk-based audit to a value-based audit. He tries to sense areas where values can be created and where value can be shown to the management. Also, it is evolved from just being a control on Excel or paper. It is now reviewing of ERP. It is reviewing the IT systems and the governance that is there around MIS. Similarly, it's also about making sure that the governance scenario and the management goals are both together. To give an example, probably if someone has dealt with a startup, their goal is to take that GMV or gross value up as much as possible. They would probably not give too much of heed to controls. But today that is changing. Or there are organizations which are very, very old and MNC driven. They will only focus on governance and not really on their goals. So today there has to be a balance between the two. You cannot just have controls and stop the entire business. At the same time, you cannot avoid controls and just say that I'm business focused. Okay. Now what it is. Now, if you would look at it, there is something as a concept called as Achilles heel. You know, when an American Institute of CPAs, they were asked, how would you define a management override? That's one of the biggest hindrance to an internal auditor today, which is a management override. That's called as Achilles heel of fraud prevention. Now, what is Achilles heel? Achilles heel is basically a concept or an idiom and a phrase where it says you might be very strong, but you fall weak on a very I mean, you are still weak when it comes to certain things, and that's where the management override is. It's basically killing your own self. You can look very strong from front, but when it comes to override by management, you're hurting your own self. That itself was one of the biggest reasons of fraud, incorrect practices, high cost happening entirely. So today, as an internal auditor, we are expected to deal with this sort of management override a lot, and the ownership to board and the ownership to audit committee is something that lies with the internal auditor. So quickly moving on. So what do audit committees ask us today? I mean, you know, I'm sure some of you might have been part of an audit committee meeting. Some of you would conduct an audit committee meetings. Their idea is never, I mean, whenever I go, they never ask me how many observations you got. They never ask me what was the fraud, what was the risk, I mean, savings that you've got. Their entire focus is, are we covered on everything? Is there something where I can have a possibility of my business going shut? What are others doing? What is it that my competitor is doing? Are they doing something much better than what I'm not able to do? You know, is there anything where I have a statutory or a reputational risk? Now, what I mean that, I mean, if you're following a practice which can hamper your reputation, then please highlight that. So they're not interested whether a purchase order was released on time or not. They're not interested whether my inventory was recorded properly or not. They're interested in reputational risk. They are interested more whether I am at the same speed at what my others are. And these questions are never to a stat auditor. These questions are always more to an internal auditor. And the last but not the least, their point is, can you fix it? They look at us, they look at internal auditors as someone who can make this fixed, or who can help them in aligning whatever the world is doing and making sure that the entire focus is shifted from a transactional discussion to a more of a governance and a focused discussion. That's probably what people will today talk about, you know. So moving on, there are normally three lines of defense. Uh, if people are conceptually aware, not aware, but it's a global term. There are three lines of defense that you have. The first line of defense is the people who are executing. Okay, so just to tell you, who will they be? The guys who are actually running the plant, the guys who are actually releasing the purchase orders, the guys who are actually storing the inventory, the guys who are actually processing the salary. So these are the first line of defense, where they are expected to make sure that they do the right thing in the right manner, following the right procedure, so that everything is correct and there is nothing is going wrong. Now, what's my second line of defense? My second line of defense is a risk management matrix that I have, a compliance and a legal team that I have, IT control that I have, which actually stops first line of defense guys to do something wrong. It's more of an oversight. It's really a direction. It's a direction from management on how should they perform and how should they collaborate. But the third line of defense, which is has to be independent and has to make a lot of sense to entire organization, is internal audit function. Today it is like third line of defense, where if my operations fail, if my management doesn't do a proper oversight, internal auditor is the one who will independently review everything and will bring it to the board and senior management whether everything is happening correctly or not. And if not, it is they who will tell what is the best way to just do that and what is the best process to follow. So that's typically a three line of defense, followed at a lot of organizations, followed at a lot of companies, and where they would actually map these three people An internal auditor is mapped, a management oversight is mapped, and the execution guy is mapped. So that's typically how 3 line of defense works. So what are the models of internal audit? How does internal audit function today? Comparatively to earlier times where या तो हमने एक आदमी रख दिया या हमने एक firm रख दी है जो अपना आप करते रहेगा. Today models have been mixed, and I'm talking about the larger groups. They have actually revamped the entire way an internal audit should work. So there are majorly 3 models: in-house, outsourced, and co-sourced. As the name suggests, in-house, where I have all my internal auditors as a in-house team. Someone like Coca-Cola, someone like Mondelez or P&G would do. I mean, you should not be surprised when I say that Coca-Cola has almost a team of 25 to 30 people just to do internal audit. The ITCs of the world have more than 45 to 50 people just to do internal audit. And these are independent guys, independent teams. Then you have something like outsourced, where probably there is a coordinator and the entire work is outsourced to a large firm or a consulting firm. The major reason to do that is to keep that independence much stronger, to make sure that that independence is prevailed, to make sure that being a consultant or being an external auditor, they have the best of knowledge of what's happening in the world, so they can give me the best industry practice. That's probably some of the benefits of an outsourced one. Now, the third is a co-sourced one. So a company like Reliance, I'm sure, I mean, the largest company of India, now they typically have almost a strength of 300 plus internal audit people, out of which 100 odd are in-house and 200 odd are co-sourced. Now, what does that do? Now, that model is typically the latest and the new model that's coming up. The idea is the in-house guy will help with all the data, all the connects, all the systems. The outsourced guy will keep the independence, will get the best practices, and will make sure there is no, there is no, I mean, there is a proper segregation of duty and there is no disconnect between what is expected and what is performed, and there is no biasness towards anybody in the company. So the co-source model is really taking up a lot of uh, strength today, and people are highly focused on moving it to a co-source model. Okay. Any questions? Anything from anyone? Okay. All right. So now what's new? What is coming new today? What is next? I mean, now we have evolved. We have moved from internal audit to a risk-based internal audit to a value-added risk-based internal audit. Now what's next? Are we expecting something more out of an internal auditor? The answer is completely yes. What are they expected of? What is it that they are expected of to do today? One, they are expected to upgrade themselves entirely on their IT skills and on their techno-commercial skills. Today, I mean, I can be very confident in telling an internal auditor who does not understand commercial things of the world, who does not understand technical capabilities, if he is working for a real estate or an infra or a large, whatever structuring companies, you will not be able to give your best. Today, people are expecting you to be having an idea about all of the things. So that's where an internal auditor is expected to understand. It's not about creating a product. It's not about that guy will have to go and build roads, but it's about understanding how a road is built. It's about understanding what material does what. It's about understanding what sort of equipments are used to create another product. How does a machine function? How does a production cycle function? The expectations are very high. The expectations of an internal auditor today has gone to the roof, where they are expected not only to know about accounting, not only to know about tax or finance, they are also should be aware about all the other processes that can come their way. The next bit, I mean, which is fairly large and which is very important today, is artificial intelligence. That's taking up things with a bizarre thing. I'm sure every one of us would have heard about something called as an AI. To give an example, I was looking at food or cookies yesterday for my home, My entire Facebook filled up with cookies. My entire Zomato, Swiggy got filled up with the priorities or the paid cookie restaurants. Now, how does that happen? It's pure artificial intelligence. There is no guy, I mean, who is spying on me, but there is a software, there is a product or a tool that keeps an eye on me. Is it something which is breaching privacy? Probably yes. Am I allowing it? Yes. Can I not allow it? No. If you have to live in 2021, you will have to allow a privacy breach. I can't think of our lives without Swiggy, Zomatos, Facebooks, Twitters of the world, or even Google. Google, for that matter, is the biggest privacy breach, but you cannot help it. You are today mandated to use them. You are today forced to use them, and you are today so much addicted to use them that you cannot do away with it. And what does that do? It follows an artificial intelligence to suggest what am I supposed to buy, suggest what am I supposed to see, suggest what am I supposed to do. That's how an artificial intelligence works. Now today, people are expecting artificial intelligence to be used in audit. Might sound like a some Greek thing today, but it's not that fact. Globally, a lot of audits today are being done through an artificial intelligence. For a lot of audit, they don't need any auditor. And which are these audits? These are those transactional database driven audits where you used to see whether something has happened correctly or not. All this has moved to a guy or an artificial intelligence today who can just do that in a microsecond or a millisecond, wherein we take months and ages to do that. That's what machine learning, image recognition, cognitive computing is all about. It's not about that they look at probability or estimations. They today have reached where they can be far more accurate in judging something. I'm not sure if some people of you would have heard about a concept or a company called as Anaplan, ANAPLAN. You guys should just see that. Now that Anaplan as a software can predict what will you sell at your store tomorrow. It is something that is part of many large organizations. They can go up and predict what kind of customers will you see, and that predictability is coming purely because of your data that's there in the past. Now, why is it taking charge? Because humans are slow, AI is fast. Humans tend to be inefficient, AI is fairly efficient. And today earlier, they used to just do the back calculation. We used to use AI for analytics, but today they are used for projections. And that's where the entire world is going. Now, if you don't understand how an AI works, how will you audit an AI? And in a recent example, I'm asked to audit a tool which is used by a company to predict what sort of inventory they should manage. And our scope is to review whether that AI is giving the right thing or not. Now, if I don't understand what that AI is doing, forget even suggesting whether AI is giving the right thing or not. And you cannot just go and do a manual calculation and match AI's calculation to your calculation and tell कि अच्छा नहीं अभी सब ठीक है अभी तो ये match हो रहा है अभी तो ये match नहीं हो रहा है. Now that's not what the thing is. The expectation is to improve an AI. Imagine, I mean, they are expecting a human to replace an AI and then expecting an AI to replace a human and then expecting a human to revamp an AI more. So, but that is where it has reached. Today, consulting has gone to that level where people will expect you to review an AI tool. Now, you talk about all. I mean, Alexa, you talk about Tesla, Sophia. It's all AI driven. I would tell you one very. I remember an example. So I don't know if ever you guys have been in a Tesla. It's not in India, but if you guys have traveled abroad, I got an opportunity to sit in a Tesla, in Europe, and I can tell you that 90 seconds, the first 90 seconds where the guy decided to turn his seat 360-degree around and talk to me face to face when I was sitting on the back seat and the car was riding on a road full of traffic. I mean, I was speechless. You cannot imagine that sight, but that's how it is. That the car exactly knew when to stop. The car exactly knew when to take a turn, when to honk, when not to honk. And that's it. That's where the world is. And I'm sure with Tesla coming to India, I'm sure we all must be in it sooner or later. But what it calls for that we need to now revamp. We cannot do same old school thing, checking a document, ticking a document. Otherwise, we'll be extinct. We'll be like dinosaurs, wherein nobody would need an internal auditor, wherein nobody would need an auditor as such, and they would all move to an AI. I mean, I'm sure people who are more into stat and tax audits also they would not deny that a lot of it has taken up by an AI. So as someone who have been consulting into it along, we need to now become smarter than AI tool. Now, there's just a slide. Probably, I'm not sure if anyone can understand. It's just a transcript that the world is reaching where one AI will start talking to another AI, and this is how they will talk. And probably that's where you would be forced to understand their language. You'll be forced to see what they're talking, and probably forced to live with them. Now, what is AI in internal audit? Where all it is there? Where all it can be implemented? What is the expectation out there? So AI today is getting used from a risk assessment to an audit plan. As a auditor, we are using AIs to tell us where the right risks are, making sure those areas are there. Effectively, an AI is used entirely in implementation to make sure that whatever changes have been suggested, whatever process have been defined, are being followed and are being tracked, which humanly is not possible. Uh, AI is also tracked to ensure that there are no moral and ethical issues. Around an organization, if there are any moral ethical issues, AI is required to probably assess on that, which is how that can be things like email scrutiny. We use AI to do an email scrutiny if any one of you has been part of forensics. So a lot of forensic audits today require an email scrutinies and things like that, where an AI is used. And as a human, we are started to trust AI more than the human himself. If a data tells me, or if an analyzed data tells me that these 10 transactions have done wrong, probably as a board member, I'll rely that more than my auditor telling me by doing some work on his Excel sheet. So entirely today, an AI is an integral part of internal audit. We all follow it in some or the other manner, some in the smaller level, some at the higher level, depends on the organization, internal structures and everything. But yes, it's coming. We need to get geared up for it, and it's really coming very, very fast in our day-to-day life. Now, how will you use? What will shift? I remember talking to someone when we were doing part of Meru cabs and all that, and review, where we wanted to review each and every transaction on every day, whether there is some sort of a manipulation. How? So if you guys remember, there was those trips, number of trips, pay offers and all that. When initially Meru, Ola and all went into fighting mode, they used to give a huge incentive to drivers. Now, how does that work? If I want to audit as an auditor, I was like, boss, you guys have 1 lakh trip a day. I can't audit it. My Excel sheet gets over in 10 days. What do I do after that? How do I review? How do I check? Now, that's what AI is used for. It can be part of SQL queries. It can be part of databases. I mean, SQL queries like the last form of an AI, but probably that's what it is. You end up using AI to analyze huge volumes of data, which was earlier impossible. You end up using AI to link SAP or market intelligence things to social media, to whatever. I mean, you can link today SAP to anything that you want. A gut instinct that we used to call. I mean, I used to tell. I mean, I'm sure a lot of you guys who you do internal audit would realize we judge people. We judge people. We start a process. We do our opening meetings, and after that we say, yeah, ठीक है, ये बंदा fraud नहीं है. ये बंदे के process सब ठीक होंगे. ये बंदा ठीक है. इसको आगे जाने दो. It was more of a gut instinct, and trust me, I still follow that a lot of times. Probably it's a very strong instinct that even machines can't tell. But yes, gut instinct is today getting replaced by a machine behavior, and that data is coming from an AI. So yes, an AI can definitely free up a lot of bandwidth for us. It can help us focus on things that will really add value. and will make a change rather than be focusing on doing those Excel files, pivot tables, etc. So that's how we need to use AI today in internal audit. Now the point is, I mean, are we ready? Are we really ready for it? We all, I'm sure, we all would say, yes, yes, we understand AI. We know that AI is coming. We know that AI is important. But are we really ready? So, are we ready for investment? Are we ready for effort, time, and energy to learn how AI works? Are we ready to control all the qualities of what AI gives? Can you replace the human touch there? How do you protect? And if it's all AI, then how do you protect it's not getting hacked and things like that? So an overhaul of the entire profession is something that's there. So from a transaction-based audit approach that we used to follow, today we are talking about an AI-based, data-driven, analytical-driven audit approach. And that's where the entire journey of an internal auditor is moving. And that's probably the entire function is, you know. So that's about the evolution. It's like, you know, it's a small meme. Probably I'm sure some of you who are connected to it will understand. Uh, you know, where we today do surprise audits by making a lot of noise about it, and then we say that okay, let's keep it a low affair. You know, so that's how today surprise audits and everything happens. But it's happening everywhere. Every day there is a surprise audit, test, forensic going in either of the company. So that's broadly the topic one. Anything, anyone, any questions, any point to be discussed in detail? Guys, I hope I'm not alone on the call. Okay. Amit, Kishore, are you guys there? Sure. So probably I think maybe you all have understood or probably you all have slept off. I am not 100% sure about it. And anyways, so moving on, maybe to our quick second topic that we have, which is about how do we do internal audit or how is that done? Probably you guys just allow me a minute. Just give me a minute, please. Yep. Is the screen visible? Anyone? Sure. Assuming it's visible. Okay. So moving on to the fact on how now after learning how an internal audit is evolved, there's just a quick guide on how do you do an audit? How do you start? From where do you start? From what it is that we need to do? Okay. Thanks for confirming. Yep. One second. Sure. Yep. Okay. Now, before we start on how it is done, you know, these are the very basics about whenever you go for an audit. Now, my idea to take this session is probably for everyone, whether experienced and experienced, or whether someone who has been part of internal audit for a long time, or someone who's been new to it, or who would want to start about it. I've just kept it pretty simple and straightforward. Maybe for some of us, it might be a pretty basic thing, but for some, it can be an important aspect. So this is how that entire session has been built. One is, of course, making sure that laptop, charger, pen drive, notepad is all there. At your home, if you're auditing, it's all connected well. Two things that you guys should just understand and learn from an standards of auditing perspective, and this is very important for an auditor. For an internal auditor per se is SA 315 and SA 330, uh, identifying the risk of material misstatement, and secondly, a response to assessed risk. These two are definite standards that you guys should review and learn. Uh, Moving next is making sure that you have client details, making sure that you have SPOC details, because a lot of us, when we go to clients, we spend hours on the gate. We don't get an entry because we weren't sure kisse baat karna hai, kisko phone karna hai, and all that. Who will make the pass? Because these organizations today have a lot of control and security built in. So just make sure that all this is there. You are setting up meetings, you're sending calendar invites to people, and also if you're from a new place, from a new city, from going to a new town for auditing, please make sure that you plan your logistics well. It does not look good if a consultant or an auditor comes delayed on his time, if a consultant or an auditor is not aware about the city. So please be very much aware that that helps you to connect people. When you go to Delhi and talk to people about Delhi, they connect well with you and probably will get your data faster. So that's how you probably do it. uh, Now, what are we going to cover and how are we quickly going to move? So one is, the topics are simple: audit planning, how to conduct an audit, and how to report once you do an audit. So from starting from the step of meeting with the client as the first meeting, to sending the data request, to data reviews, to doing a walkthrough, following it up, sending a draft report, and doing post following up meetings are the quick topics that we will be covering in the entire discussion. Okay. Now, what is an opening meeting with the client, and why is it so important? And why is there a focus? I mean, why am I spending a slide on an opening meeting with the client? Now, if I have to tell you, this drives the entire audit for you. Okay. This meeting, or this first step of conducting, is probably the most important and the crucial step. Why? It helps you to set the tone of what are you going to do in the audit. It helps you to connect with the people whom you're going to audit or review. It helps you to make them understand that, okay, you're not an auditor, you're not a guy who will complain to the management, you're more of a person who are here to improve the systems. And it helps you to also communicate the deadlines, timelines, everything. So this meetings, probably if done well, can act as a most critical tool or an anchor in your entire audit. This will also tell you which data will be available with whom you should ask, and how much time it will take if that data is not available readily. So make sure that you guys take up this opening meeting pretty seriously. Make sure that there is a huge focus being done and spent on what would be asked. You should always have a day in advance where you're preparing your questions, you're preparing your context, and then accordingly you're doing an audit opening meeting. Moving next, once the opening meeting is done, the first thing that you should be able to send, one is of course the minutes of the meeting, but the next is the data request. And what are these data requests? The initial data request cannot be transactions. The initial data request is more about the critical policies, procedures, authority matrix, reports that they can download from their ERP. What do they maintain manually? And then you probably also prepare a reminder, a detailed a tracker where you actually track the requested, whom you requested, when was it first reminded. See, because understand, today doing audit on time is one of the most critical aspect, and getting data to do the audit is the most difficult aspect. So I'm sure we all have gone through a time where client just does not give a data, and we end up spending time, we end up burning our money, we end up burning our value added, and we get irritated. Now, you need to follow a basic system of tracking all your data and an escalation matrix where you know how to report in case there is a delay happening. Okay. Now, once you get the data tracker in place, once you have put a request, the first thing is to do a data mining. What is a data mining? A data mining is basically making sure that for your audit, what all reports do you need? So if supposedly I'm doing a purchase audit, what's the report that I need? The first report that I would need is a vendor master. Then I would need a purchase request tracker. Then I would need a purchase order report. Make sure that you prepare that list. Make sure that you take access of those reports by yourself. No, and usually not depend on the client to give you those reports. I mean, now that's again an art where you have to convince clients to just give you the data, convince clients to help you download by yourself. Now, once you got that data downloaded, once you have all the fields available, the first step that you're supposed to do is to understand those fields. Understand what field talks about which data. Is it a relevant data or an irrelevant data? And then you go ahead and save everything as our base data. Ensure that these tables and these files are not tampered at all. And then you do all your working in a separate file, and while copying the entire data, and you do it there. The reason for this is that tomorrow, if you do a wrong working, if there are some deletion that happens, if there is any wrong thing that has happened, you need to have a base ground data, and that data should help you in case there is a trouble. So it's basically mitigating your own risk as an auditor, and that's what it is. uh, Formatting of data is extremely important once you download it. See, the beautiful looking data tells you more beautiful things. And if you're talking about a data, it's like a thing where if you don't delete the blank rows, you don't delete blank columns, you'll get irritated to go till Z just to review 4 columns. You can't go to a column Z or a column AB or a column AE if you just need 5 data points out of it. So make sure that you trim down your report, make sure that you clean up your report, make sure that there is a complete sanity around what you're deleting and what you are keeping. Now this file is ready for analysis. This is how you prepare. Okay. Now, what is data analysis? Data analysis is probably reviewing the entire data in a specific direction, and to see any inconsistency or any sort of an inefficiency that data is trying to tell you, which can be PO raised after, say, 90 days of requirement. Now, what does that tell? So if a PO is raised after 90 days of its PR date, it just does not tell you that. It tells you a lot of it. It tells you what was business doing for 90 days, whether there was enough material available for 90 days. If it was a yes, a material was available for 90 days, then why did the PR team raised it before? Why did they want to overbuild it? What is the control? Why did PO team did not raise a PO? How were they aware about it? So there are so many questions that piles up just with a simple analytic of a delay between PR to PO. And it can give you innumerable points to present and probably improve the process. So that's how you just do it. All exceptions get noted in a different sheet. You probably rename that sheet and say that these are the tests performed, this was what you followed, and make it self-explanatory for anyone to review. The easier and the better reviews are done when the data that you get is self-explanatory. So that's how it typically would work for anyone. Okay. Now, one of the most critical thing is a validation of what you have analyzed. Okay. And I can tell you, I analyzed and I saw that a PO was created before PR. Okay. I prepared the entire table, I prepared the data file, and I just went up and saying, boss, your PR process is completely, it's just not working. Everything is done before PR, your POs are raised before PR, everything, and I've just presented it to the board. I realized at the board meeting, boss, my data validation was just not right. The date conversion that happened from ERP to Excel was incorrect. So April, which was supposed to be like November, became April, and April became November, March became July, whatever. My date conversion was wrong, and that's what made the entire thing look very different. So how do you help it? Whenever you analyze something, whenever you get an abnormal thing or an exception, the first thing you should ensure is to fundamentally check whether that exception is correct. Go back to the user, go back to the auditee, take one sample. If you want to hide the if you want to hide the entire magnitude, I mean, take for 1, 5, 10, 25, whatever number of samples you think can be answered by the auditee. Take those samples, take only those cases. Discuss with him that these are just exceptions. Discuss with him. Don't tell him if you want to keep it to yourself, if it's a bigger issue, but just get every analytics validated. That's the most critical and the important part of it. You need to analyze, but you need to validate all what you are analyzing. Okay. Now that's how you typically would analyze the data. The next step is a walkthrough and a design check. Now, what is that? A walkthrough is basically to understand the entire process step by step. It's more like asking the operator or the process guy, what does he do? It's not about digging him at that moment. It's not about interrogating him. It's only about how do you work, not guiding him, not suggesting nothing. You just have to make sure that you understand what he does. Make sure that you take screenshots of what he does. Make sure that you take copies of the file that he follows. So, an onboarding, so an HR guy will say, okay, once the employee is selected, we fill this form, we give him these formats to fill, we give him an employment letter, we create his email ID by sending an email to IT team. IT team confirms, email ID gets created, etc., etc. So the expectation is that you guys take that format, take that data, take every sample, so that you can go back and look at those samples again and look at how a process is followed. Okay. Now, most important and critical thing is sample selection. Just a second. Okay. Now, when you give a sample, you're not doing a transaction audit. So your transaction selected should cover the entire ambit and the limited number of things. That will be basis your walkthrough. So where you after a walkthrough realize, okay, these are the manual points. So this is where I need to select samples. These are the high value items. This is where I need to select the samples. And these are my, outcome that I'm expecting. That's how I should select the sample. And these are my different scope of line item. So I should select different samples for different scopes so that I'm covering the much larger ambit. And I'm releasing the samples. Now the samples needs to be released ideally within first 2 to 3 days max of your opening meeting. And what that 3 days will comply of, that 3 days will be downloading data, analyzing data, and reviewing the data and sending the samples. That's very, very important. Otherwise, the entire audit scoping and timeline will just take an impact. Okay. Now, very critical, important, and I'm sure all of us have gone through this, is a follow-up. We release the data, we release the sample, but the client does not give the data, client does not give the samples. So it's important that there is a way and a reasonable time frame agreed, and this is where that opening meeting comes handy, where you agree an escalation matrix in case there is a delay. In case there is a delay happening in receiving of data, you intimate the right guy, right time. If you have not done it, you will just sit idle. It will waste the entire audit cost, audit time. Also, if there is if you're a leader, you should just make sure that there is an open tracker available on a daily basis. What data has come, what data has not come, and you take a call of escalating it as and when required. Now, the next important thing is status update. Make sure that you guys prepare a status update intimating your senior. If you are the senior, then intimating the client SPOC. If you are the client SPOC, then intimating the internal audit head, and so on and so forth. But the status update is extremely important, which should tell how is it progressing, what has come, what has not come. Is there something that needs to be further reviewed, further seen? Is there something that needs a more focus? Are there any gray areas that you are seeing and you would need further assessment of it? So how does that work? So that's a status update. Now, lastly, what you have is finalization of an audit point. So how do you finalize an audit point? Audit issues just don't come like that. I mean, it's not like you are sitting, you're talking to a guy, and after the conversation is over, you'll get an audit issue. They have to be evaluated for design. They have to be evaluated for exceptions. They have to be evaluated for what is available. They have to be seen from what can go wrong. You have to really think whether it can really go wrong. And if the answer is yes, then probably that's an audit issue to start with. You have to then go back to the business guy, explain him your thing, give him an opportunity to answer. And then if he gives a justifiable answer, you need to again revalidate all your exceptions and then see whether his answer is fitting or not. If not, it becomes like an audit issue. It becomes like an audit point, and that's how you derive it. Yeah. So this is still audit and before we go to reporting and all those points, these is there. Any questions? Anything? Anyone? Okay. So moving on in terms of how do you draft an issue? How do you draft an audit issue? Now that's again a skill. A lot of it, people feel that finding an issue is important. Report में क्या है? कोई भी बना देगा. Honestly, that's not how it is. It's all about drafting. Finally, drafting has a huge impact on what you have identified. Of course, getting an issue, getting an out of box thinking is important. But how do you draft and how does that comes up for review is extremely important for somebody to be interested, for somebody to review that report, and that is something that comes with time, comes with experience. But then there are quick reckoners for it, which I would personally always follow and recommend. Is the first an observation title. Now, what is an observation title? So an observation title is a one-line summary of what are you trying to intend. That ideally should be assertive, should be something that gives confidence to someone that, okay, this can be corrected and this is what is expected, or that can be something that shows the value to make someone interested in that entire observation. So your title plays a huge role in how do you draft. Now, how do you draft an observation? Now, observation is typically a background and what is happening currently. That's it. So you need to make sure that you write the background. You just cannot write PO issued without approval. Now that's still a title, but if I've seen people writing that as a description. Now, why is this an issue? You need to make sure that, okay, there's a company policy which says that everything above a certain value needs to be approved by XYZ guy. On our review of 100 samples, we found that this is not happening. And that is why we are concluding this. So this gives an entire feel of the observation to the person who's reviewing the report. Otherwise, it's an extremely difficult thing for him to analyze and understand what's happening. How do you use abbreviations is important. I would suggest never to use an abbreviation, not even for commonly used terms like PO, GRN, HR, manager, whatever. You need to use a full form. That's always suggested. A basic grammar check. I think Word, Excel, PPT, all are equipped enough to tell you when you frame a wrong sentence. Please make sure that that's being followed, and all of us, before sending a report, reviews that. Okay. Now, what do you mean when you say a review of a report? A review is basically looking at a draft version, doing multiple iterations between team lead partners, between the SPOC, to make sure that the entire quality of control is discussed. And once you do everything, that is where the outcome that comes is called as a report. You cannot start calling a draft report as a report, because a report which is not reviewed as a report, because then there is a huge disconnect. Okay. The idea is always that a report which is issued should have consensus from anyone and everyone. It cannot be a report which has differences. Okay. Probably the next step you do is you discuss the report with the client. You make sure that there is sufficient time given for him to understand the issue, sufficient time given for him to do a detailed background check. And for an auditor, it's important that there is a sufficient homework done. You need to be someone who can preempt what a client will ask, and you need to make sure that someone who takes down notes of whatever the client is suggesting and pointing it out. Now, once you do the meetings, there can be a lot of follow-ups to be taken. There can be some additional issues, some additional workings to be done, or some clarification to be done. Make sure these are responded on time. These are suggested and well documented on an email or on a tracker, and then this is done. Now that's broadly the entire coverage of how to do an audit and report the audit issues to various clients or various companies that you do for. So anyone, anything, any question?
So we can take questions at last, in the last.
So Kishore, probably this is what I had for my agenda. Maybe we can start a Q&A.
Okay. All right.
So leaving it to everyone for any sort of questions.
Members, if you have any queries, then you please raise your hand. You can ask by raise hand, or you can post a query in the chat box.
Okay, I think either everyone understood everything or everyone does not understood nothing. Yeah. Fair. So I'll leave it to the members. I think this is what was there for my agenda. Any specific point that needs to be elaborated more, I'll be happy to do it. I can understand we have finished a little bit early on time, but maybe I was expecting few questions and the time was kept for that.
Sheetal madam?
Yes, sir.
Please.
Sourabh?
Yep.
So do you have something, any case law, any interesting example to show if the members are interested? Any important case law?
Sure, I can. I think I skipped one slide. Let me go that to that side. Sure, I'll showcase a slide probably would deal with which deals with some of the case studies where a value addition was done. This was more done on a personal front through various audits using my team and everything. But what is more important for all of us to see and probably discuss over here is uh, how it was achieved. So I can showcase some of the things. Uh, like we added about 180 crores of savings to a client, fairly large organizations in wind energy. And the way it was added, the way it changed everything for them was reviewing their entire inventory management process. So just to give a brief, what used to happen, they used to get a lot of faulty parts from their machines, which used to come for repair. There was no recording of those repair parts anywhere, and they were just lying. Some of them were repaired and some of them were just kept as scrap. uh, an entire study was done, and over a period of 6 months we realized that a lot of inventory was just brought down. It's like your tire, it just got burst once. You replaced it with a stepney and nobody cared about that tire which got burst. It can be repaired or it can just be corrected. We got the entire study done. We made sure that there is a process to evaluate every item before it's sent out to scrap, and it's evaluated for its repair, and those repairs are then properly accounted and properly reviewed. And that's how an entire inventory of about 3,000 crores, maybe we could find that there are inventory over 200 crores that can still be repaired and used, and you don't need to buy. And that really added a huge value for the company. uh, One another case study where we are moving a lot and a lot of people can see is on automations. Today as an auditor, we are expected to do a lot of automations, and if you suggest automations to companies, they'll be happy to uh, take that up and evaluate. Now I remember working for a leading cab driving company. They had a problem of you know discount and schemes being passed on to their drivers. Now, it used to be all done manually by three people sitting and doing it on Excel. We understood the entire process. You go down deep in it. See, it's a very very tricky thing. You have to go down deep, understand everything, work with a developer, and probably develop a framework where everything can get calculated automatically. And that's how we did it, and that typically resulted in improving the entire efficiency, in making sure that the outcome or the desired result is done on an immediate basis, and then accordingly schemes were paid off, and that resulted again into a huge savings for the organization. So the entire idea to share and discuss this is that if you go deep into a process, if you spend a huge time and effort in understanding a company's behavior, there are multiple ways and avenues to optimize and save a particular value for an organization. So I can recollect these two very very good effort or a value added thing that we have done, which have really helped organizations. So I leave it back to the CP circle guys.
Yeah, Sheetal.
Hello.
Yes, Sheetal. Please take it forward again.
Members, do you have any queries? May post it in the chat box. I think so. That's all from our members' side. They have really understood the good session and relevant topic for the day. The changing landscape and the emphasis on risk management and control functions make the role of auditor very critical. With today's sessions, I'm sure our members would be benefited and indeed would help them in discharging their responsibility as auditor in an efficient manner. Now I would request CA Manoji Khemka ji to present a formal vote of thanks.
Manoji, you may unmute your
Sure, I'll do that.
sir, your camera also, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sheetal ji. Good evening, everyone. At the outset, I thank
Welcome,
the Bhayander Study Circle of WIRC for giving this opportunity to me. It was indeed a precious and privileged moment for us, having presence of CA Sourabh Jain in spite of his busy schedule. Our heartfelt thanks for sparing your valuable time for this interaction. This session would be more beneficial for the professionals who are practicing in internal audit. Hope this interaction will definitely bore fruits and clear concept of internal audit and risk management. Before this session, there was a lot of ambiguity in our mind. But after today's healthy session, it will surely enhance our understanding of practical aspects of internal audit and risk management. I thank you once again for sparing your valuable time for this interactive session. Further looking forward for your continuous support towards Bhayander CPA Study Circle of WIRC in all its future endeavors. Thank you, Sheetal.
Thank you, Khemka ji.
Thank you so much, Sourabh ji.
Ritu ma'am, I would request you to please present the memento as a contribution to CAPF to Sourabh.
Ritu madam will be relogging in a few seconds. She had some technical glitch. I'm just awaiting her.
Sourabh sir, we have started with contributing on behalf of our speakers to CAPF of ICAI as a token of thanks.
That's a very, very good initiative. I'm really happy to be a part of it and to see this initiative.
Sir, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Sorry for the technical issue at my side.
No problem.
Sir, we would like to present this receipt to you. We will contribute this amount in your name.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for making me a part of this and inviting me. I hope the session was fruitful for everyone and really add any value. Feel free to reach out just to all in case there is something that anyone would want to discuss it further.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sourabh ji.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Sourabh, for your valuable time.
Thank you, members.
Thank you, members.
Madam,
We
are
have
you evening right now?
members. We have
Madam, I can end the session.
sir. Just announcing.
Okay,
Just a second.
Okay.
Members, we have another meeting tomorrow morning on the topic of financial due diligence at 10:30. Usually we keep meetings at 11, but then tomorrow it is at 10:30. So please join the meeting. See you tomorrow. Thank you. Kunj bhai.
Yes, madam. Just a second. Just putting this on the chat box.
Yeah.
Tomorrow's session is at 10:30.
Yeah.
Not 11 as the normal time.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you,
Thank you.
members. Thank you, Kishore. Thank you, Sheetal madam. Thank you, Ritu madam.